الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون وقال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد أيضا إن أول بيت وضع للناس للذي ببكة مباركا وهدى للعالمين وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في الحديث أحب البلاد إلى الله مساجدها وأبغض البلاد إلى الله أسواقها أو كما قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. My dear respected brothers, sisters and youngsters, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who has given us the tawfiq, that divine aid, that we are able to make some effort for deen. We are able to make that effort to learn a little more about deen. And in life, we should always remember one thing as Muslims. No matter how much ilm we have, no matter how many degrees we have, we can never stop studying deen. The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says, طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيضَةٌ عَلَى كُلِّ Muslim. That seeking knowledge is compulsory upon every Muslim. And even whilst preparing, because I had to prepare, there is so much ahadith that I came across that even within my 8 years of studying and my many years of teaching, I never came across them. So it shows that as individuals, as Muslims, we always have to make effort in learning about deen. Every day we can learn something new about deen. And by learning new things and by learning those things which pleases Allah and His Rasul, it should be the means by which we get closer to Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. My topic that I have been asked to speak upon is that of the etiquettes of the Masjid. But before I speak about the etiquettes of the Masjid, because when we look around in our community today and in the society at large, we see that the sanctity, the respect for the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not there. And many a times as Muslims we commit sin, not even realizing that we are committing sin. And many a times that we may come to the Masjid and we deprive ourselves of even getting the blessings of remaining in the Masjid. Why? Because of the lack of knowledge. So inshallah, before I speak about the etiquettes and the adab of Masjid, let us go back to the beginning of time, the first house that was placed on the face of the earth. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Hazrat Adam alayhi salam, he was roaming in Jannah. He was living in Jannah, in the bliss of Jannah. And because of the error that he committed, with the influence of Iblis, Shaitan, who was Adu Mubin, who is our open enemy, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him onto the face of the earth. As he was sent onto the face of the earth, he was instructed, because as he would have accustomed doing, he was always in the ibadat and the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as he came onto the face of the earth, he wanted to fulfill what is his responsibility, what is all of our responsibility. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned to us in the Holy Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created man and jinn except that they worship me. This is our objective of life. So when Hazrat Adam alayhi salam came, he wanted a place of worship. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeing this, instructed him to build Al-Kaaba. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentioned in Surah Ali Imran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Inna awwala baytin, verily the first house, wudi'a lin-nas, which has been placed, which has been prescribed, lin-nas, for mankind, lalladhi bi Bakkata, it is that of Bakka, or which we call Makkah. And this word Bakka is even mentioned in the ancient scripts, the script of Musa and Isa. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, verily the first house that is placed on the face of the earth, it is that house of Bakka. It is Mubarak, it is blessed. وَهُدَى لِلْعَالَمِينَ, and it is a huda, it is a guidance for all of mankind. It is a guidance for all of man, the entire world, subhanallah. So much so that up to today, each and every one of us, this is our qibla, this is our direction. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Hazrat Adam alayhi salam onto the face of the earth, He appointed Angel Jibreel alayhi salam to show him exactly where he wanted this house to be placed, where this Kaaba will be placed. And it is mentioned in a hadith which is narrated by Hazrat Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala, and he said, he asked Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, which was the first house to be built? The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he says, Al-Kaaba, Al-Haram. Then he asks, what is next? He says, Al-Aqsa, Masjid Al-Aqsa in Jerusalem. So then he asks, how much time was there between these two, building of these two houses? The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said 40 years. Now in researching it, I got a little confused because 40 years. But then as I continued to do my research, I realized the commentators, they were explaining that first when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Hazrat Adam alayhi salam on the face of the earth, and this is the most accepted qawl, that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Hazrat Adam alayhi salam onto the face of the earth and he built Al-Makkah, the Haram, Al-Kaaba, then the other house that he built 40 years after was that in Jerusalem, Masjid Al-Aqsa. However, when the flood of Nuh alayhi salam came, it destroyed these houses. According to one riwayat, it is mentioned that it was lifted. However, the foundation of that house remained. But with the passage of time, because of the fact Makkah being a desert, the foundation was covered. When Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam was instructed to take his family and reside and settle in Makkah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the instruction to build Al-Kaaba, it is mentioned that Angel Jibreel alayhi salam again showed him exactly the spot. So from this we understand that the first person to build Al-Kaaba is that of Prophet Adam alayhi salam, but it was rebuilt by that of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and his son Ismail alayhi salam. And Masjid Al-Aqsa, which is in Jerusalem, as the riwayat mentioned, it was first built by Hazrat Adam alayhi salam, and it was rebuilt by that of Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam, for which it is mentioned that he supervised the construction and the rebuilding of Masjid Al-Aqsa, and he was looking at the jinnats while they were building the masjid, and he was leaning on his staff, and he passed away while it was being built. But he remained leaning on his staff, and the only time that they knew that he had died, it is mentioned that the worm started to eat his staff, and because of that it broke and he fell. And this is when they realized that he had passed away. But by that time they had already built Masjid Al-Aqsa. Hazrat Adam built Kaaba. It was rebuilt by Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salam. Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam, he rebuilt Masjid Al-Aqsa. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his first house, the first masjid that he built as a prophet, it is that of Masjid Al-Quba. Masjid Al-Quba, it is on the outskirts of Medina, and that was the first masjid that was built by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then after that, was Masjid al-Nabawi in Medina. It is mentioned that when the Prophet ﷺ, he arrived in Medina, everyone wanted that Rasulullah ﷺ stayed by them. So they were trying to get the reins of his camel. The Rasul ﷺ, he says, leave it alone, for indeed it has been instructed where it will stop, where I will spend the night. The camel went through the streets of Medina. As it will pause, someone will feel happy and think, well, it is stopping by me for the night, but it continued until it stopped in front of the house of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari. He was the host of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he remained there. It is mentioned that there was an empty lot of land which belonged to two orphans, Sahal and Suhail. These two orphans, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he offered to buy the piece of land from them. They say, "Oh Rasulullah, we will give it to you." He says, "No." Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala and says, "I will purchase it." The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "No." Then the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala, and he says, "You pay for it and I will pay you back." The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam purchased the land. There was a grave on it, according to one narration. It was leveled. There were some trees. The trees were cut. The trunk of the trees were used as the pillars, and the leaves of the date palm trees was used as the roof. It is mentioned that one of the trunk remained as the member of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there is where Masjid al-Nabawi started. And then later on, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he attached an annex along with the masjid. But what I would like to show you is this, to see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala appoints certain people to build his house. Not any and everybody builds the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only the pious. As we would have seen that the prophets at that time would have built Baytullah. Because the masajids, they are indeed the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are the representations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the face of the earth. So when we look at a masjid, it is not just any house. It is Baytullah. It is the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the fact of it being the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it requires utmost respect. It requires utmost reverence. Because this is not any normal house. And because it is the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the protocol, the conditions for such a house will be much more than any other house. If it is, let's say for instance, you have one of your friends. You can simply call him and say, "I'm passing." You say, "Okay, come in." But if you have to go to the Prime Minister's residence or the President's residence, the amount of protocol, dress code, all kind of different things because of who they are. So therefore, the house of Allah, the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala al-ard, it requires from us much more reverence, respect, adab, etiquettes. And who has shown us these etiquettes? It is that of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For indeed Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Certainly there is for you in the best of examples in that of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he showed us exactly how we should deal with the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What are the conditions for building the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, "Ahabbul bilad ilallah masajiduha." The most beloved places to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, masajiduha, is the masjid. Why? Because the masjid, they are involved in the dhikrullah. They are involved in the remembrance of Allah. They're involved in the glorifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَأَبَغَضَ الْبِلَادِ, and the most hated place in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, أَسْوَاقُهَا, is the marketplaces. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hates it so much. Why? Because of the types of sin that takes place in the marketplace. The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he mentions this. He says, قال إن هذه المسجد, verily the masjid, لا تصلح لشيء من هذه البول, that verily the masjid is not, there is nothing in the masjid, that these masjid, there should be nothing of urine, wala qadari, nor should there be anything of filth. إنما هي لذكر الله تعالى, they are only for the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَالصَّلَاةُ, and salah, وَقِرَاءَةِ الْقُرْآنِ, and the recitation of the Quran. This is what the masjids are for. The masjids, the Baytullah, the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-ard, on the face of the earth, as mentioned by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they are for three objectives basically. One, lidhikrillah, to remember Allah. So as we are sitting here in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are involved in dhikrullah, the remembrance of Allah. As you sit here, you're getting blessings. You're getting blessings. What are we speaking about? Are we speaking about business? No. قال Allah wa qala Rasul. Dhikrullah. That is what we are doing. So the masjid is used for that. Was salah, and for prayer, establishment of prayer, whether it is nafil, whether it is fard, whatever, wajibat, it is lis salah. Wa qira'atil Quran, and the recitation of the Quran. And whilst it is that we are in the masjid, there are certain etiquettes that should be observed. And by observing these etiquettes, what will happen is that we will safeguard ourselves from falling into error and sin. We will safeguard ourselves from infringing upon the rights of people. We will safeguard ourselves from infringing upon the rights of the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And inshallah, once we uphold these adab and these etiquettes, inshallah, whilst we spend our time in the masjid, there will be forgiveness and there will be blessings. So I will start first of all, before we even come to the masjid. What is the adab? What is the etiquette? What is the mannerism that a person, he decides to come to the masjid? The first thing that we should pay particular attention to is niyyah, our intention. For the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, "Innamal a'malu bin niyat." Actions are judged by their intentions. Wa innama likulli imri'in ma nawa, and for every man is that which he intends. So if a person left his house with the intention of coming to the masjid to show, he gets no blessings. If he leaves his house with the intention of coming to the masjid to beg, he gets no blessings. He should come to the masjid for the sake of Allah, which will include one of these three matters: the dhikrullah, the remembrance of Allah, salah, or tilawat of Quran. This should be his objective. So as he leaves his home, this should be his intention. On his way, before leaving his home, it is better that he performs wudu. Huwa afdal. It is best. It is best that he perform wudu at his home. And if it is that he can walk to the masjid without difficulty, then he should do so. For indeed, this is the sunnah of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Once there were some companions who they were living a little distance from Masjid al-Nabawi in Medina. And there was an empty lot of land closer to the masjid. So they requested, "Oh Rasulullah, that we request that we come closer to the masjid, so we will leave our houses, sell our houses and come closer." The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam told them no. He says, for every step that you take from your home is a blessing for you, subhanallah. Every step. So every step that you make to come for salah, as you leave your home with wudu and you walk to the masjid, there is blessings. And for every step that you make, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevates your rank in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Jannah. Subhanallah. And not only that, but a sin is forgiven. So you imagine a person lives about 100, 200 feet away from the masjid. How many steps he have to take to and fro from the masjid, subhanallah. How many blessings he get. How many sins are forgiven. His rank is elevated. And you may not know, but while you walk to the masjid and you demonstrate your life as a Muslim, that also is a means of da'wah. So the mere fact that you walk to the masjid, it is a means of da'wah. People see you and they will say, wow, look, every hour he's going to the masjid. Look at the time he's going to the masjid. Sometimes it is an encouragement for others. A person is in their home, they don't get the zeal to perform salah in jama'ah. They see someone walking and they become encouraged also. So you get blessings for that. Because whoever do a good, whoever indicate towards a good, it is as though he would have done the good himself. So even though you did not tell that person anything, the mere fact that that person was encouraged to come to the masjid, you get the blessings for him coming to the masjid, subhanAllah. Without you even saying a word. Why? Because through your action you indicated towards a good. So a person comes to the masjid. But as he comes to the masjid, when he comes into the masjid, he reaches the masjid, the first thing that he should do is give salams. But this is very technical, because discretion should be used. We should use discretion. One is that when the person, he comes to the masjid, if he see people sitting, they're not engaged in tilawat of Quran, they're not engaged in salah, they're just sitting, then he gives salam, assalamu alaikum. If it is that they're involved in salah, they're involved in tilawat of Quran, they're involved in a lecture, then he can desist from giving salam, because to give salam is sunnah. If it is, let's say for instance, some are just sitting and some are involved in salah, then he gives salam to such an extent that only the people who are sitting will be able to hear his salams. He don't have to shout it. So he could say assalamu alaikum and he enters the masjid, gives salam. If it is there's nobody in the masjid, he should still give salam, but his salam will be different. It will be assalamu alayna min rabbina wa ala ibadillahi salihin. This is the salam he will give if there is no one in the masjid. He gives salam. And he gives salam, he will get blessings for that. Then as he enters the masjid, he enters with his right foot. So sometimes what happens is that when we're entering the masjid, we have to take off our shoes. So in order for us to enter with our right foot, we take off the right foot first. So we forgot the sunnah, because we're supposed to take off the left shoes first. So we should take off the left shoes, take off the right, and then enter with the right foot. With entering with the right foot, he recited the dua to enter the masjid. Allahumma aftah li abwaba rahmatik. O Allah, open for me your door of mercy. When that person recites that dua, it is mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala appoints an angel who continues to make dua of maghfirah and forgiveness and mercy for that person until he leaves the masjid. so long as he does not violate any of the laws of the masjid. Subhanallah. So just by he entering the masjid with his right foot, Allahumma aftah li abwaaba rahmatik, and you don't have to say it loud, you can say it quietly. Allah appoints an angel who seeks forgiveness for that person once he remains in the masjid and he doesn't violate any of the laws of the masjid. On entering the masjid, he should perform Atayyatul Masjid. What is Atayyatul Masjid? That is the right that the masjid have upon you. It is 2 rakats of salah. However, there are 3 times that we should avoid performing Atayyatul Masjid. 1, at the sunrise, when the sun is rising. So if a person comes into the masjid and the sun is rising, and along with that it is mentioned that the time before the Fajr Salah, unless he comes before the time of Fajr comes in, he can perform Atayyatul Masjid. But at the time of Fajr comes in, if he comes, he should perform his 2 sunnah, and there is no Salah after that. So if he enters and the time of Fajr did not come in as yet, if he wants, he can perform Atayyatul Masjid and he can perform Tahajjud. There is nothing wrong with that, once the time of Fajr has not yet entered. If it is that the Fajr time has entered, then he only should and he did not perform the 2 sunnah, then he should only perform the 2 sunnah and nothing else, because there is nothing between the 2 sunnahs of Fajr and after Fajr, and the Salah of Fajr, the third of Fajr. That is 1 time. The second time is that of Zawal, when the sun has reached the meridian, zenith, midday. So a person comes into the masjid and it's the time of zenith, it is Zawal, then that person should not perform any Atayyatul Masjid. If it is before, nothing wrong. If it is after, nothing wrong. So he comes into the masjid Dhuhr time. Dhuhr time is in. If he wish, he can perform 2 rakats of Atayyatul Masjid and then perform his sunnah, or he can go straight to his sunnah. Nothing is wrong with that. Why? Because by performing the sunnah, he has fulfilled the obligation of Atayyatul Masjid. Because the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, perform 2 rakat before you sit. The other time when it is not allowed for us to perform Atayyatul Masjid, at the time of sunset, when the sun is setting. So when the sun is setting, we should not perform any Atayyatul Masjid. And this will be connected with 2 times. 1, after the Asr Salah and before the Maghrib Salah in the Ahnaf, according to Ahnaf. So let's say, for instance, a person comes into the masjid, he prayed Asr already, he prayed his Asr, and he came into the masjid waiting for Maghrib Salah. He's not allowed to perform Atayyatul Masjid. Why? Because there is no Sunnah, there is no Salah after the Asr Salah. And if whilst waiting, according to Ahnaf, he should not perform Atayyatul Masjid whilst before the Maghrib Salah, because immediately after the Adhan, it is the Maghrib Fard, according to Ahnaf. There are some other Imams who have given the allowance that the person can perform Atayyatul Masjid. So these are the times with regards to performing our Atayyatul Masjid. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I will just backtrack a little because I don't want to forget this point, is that when we are coming to the masjid, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told us, he says that our clothes should be presentable. Just as how if it is we were invited by some special guest, some dignitary, some special, person, a king, invites us to his palace, we will make sure that we wear the best of clothing. We make sure that we be smelling good. Similarly, when we are coming to the masjid, we should do the same. We should ensure that we wear good clothing. It should not be torn clothing. It should not be dirty clothing. And our scent should not be obnoxious and offensive. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم, he says, من أكل من هذه الشجرة, whoever eat from this tree. And according to the muhaddithin, they have explained the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was speaking about two things, that of onion and garlic. Because when they're eaten in their raw state, they have a very offensive, strong scent. So the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying, "Man akala min hadhihi shajara, fala yaqrabanna, wala yusallina ma'ana." That he should not come close to our masjid, nor should he perform salah with us. Because what happens is that a person who eats raw onion, raw garlic, the scent that emanates is very offensive. And because of this, it affects the malaika, it affects the angels. And anything that affects the angels, or that affects man, affects the angels. So sometimes we come eating raw onion, raw garlic, then we should make sure that we wash our mouth properly, so that that scent will not remain with us. Because once it offends the malaika, the angels, it also affects and offends the musalli, the people who are performing salah. There are some people who smoke, and the nicotine is so high that it becomes offensive. That scent. Sometimes a person, his perspiration is very high. These are things that we have to work on to make sure that when we come to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we do not offend anyone. We do not offend the people who are performing salah, nor should we offend the people, the malaika and the angels. Along with that also, is that when a person he comes to the masjid, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions, he says, "Anna Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam," the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Naha an ash-shara'i wal bay'i." Sorry. "Anna Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam qala, al-busaqu fil masjid khati'atun wa kafaratuha dafnuha." That busaq refers to a person's saliva, spit. Sometimes a person, while sitting in the masjid, well, in our masjid we would not spit, but sometimes, because in the time of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, their masjid was not made of carpet, it was mud. So the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says that al-busaqu fil masjid khati'atun, spitting in the masjid is a khati, is a sin. Wa kafaratuha, and its kafara, its expiation, dafnuha, is burying it. So what they will do is that if a person, for some reason, he spit his spot in the masjid, they would do, they will take some dirt and cover it. But we cannot do this in our masjid, because our masjid is made up with carpet. But what we find in our time is that sometimes a person has something in his mouth. Sometimes a little meat or something stick up between his teeth, and he'll spit it out in the masjid. This also is not allowed. Not only that, but also sometimes a person dig their nose, and whatever come from their nose, they flick it on the ground. Sometimes a person play with their beard, and they drop it in the masjid. Then you should put it in your shirt pocket, your jubba pocket, because these things are filth. They are parts of you. Sometimes a person peel their nails, peel their skin, and as you go into the masjid, you see these things lying around. This is not becoming, because what you're doing is actually littering the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which amongst a form of khati and sin. The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he mentioned in another hadith, he says, "Anna Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam qala, inna hadhihi al-masjid la tasluhu li shay'in min hadhihi al-bawl wala qadarin إنما هي لذكر الله تعالى والصلاة وقراءة القرآن. The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he says, verily the masjid, it is not correct, it is not allowed for anything min al-bawl, from urine, wala qadar, or anything that is considered to be filthy, najis, impure. This brings to mind a particular topic. Sometimes it happens that as men, we go to the washroom and we do not clean ourselves properly. We do not make proper istinja. Sometimes we stand and urinate. The urine gets on our clothes. Sometimes our trousers are so long that when we are going to the washroom, it's dragging. Sometimes we go into the washroom barefoot. The filth, it comes into the masjid. This creating a means of sin for us also. So it is our responsibility to make sure that when we are entering the masjid, our clothes are clean and we are not bringing filth into the masjid. We are not bringing impurities into the masjid. Because when we bring impurities in the masjid, not only are we affecting ourselves, but we are affecting other people who are also performing salah. So when we are coming to the masjid, we should make sure that we clean ourselves properly. We cleanse ourselves properly. I will give you an incident which took place in the time of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There was one person, he went into the masjid and he was urinating. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw him urinating. As it was brought to his attention, the companions wanted to rush and grab him. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told him, he says, wait until he's finished. He says, wait until he's finished. When he finished, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he sent to call him. He instructed the companions to get a bucket of water to wash that spot. And he called him and he says, do you know where you are? And he reprimanded him, but he reprimanded him with such a way of hikmah and wisdom that the person who did that act did not felt as though he committed a criminal act. So this is also very important for us. That sometimes even though something may be wrong, when we are reprimanding a person, when we are correcting a person, we should not cause harm. But we should let them know that what you're doing is not correct. But at the same time, we should not cause them harm. We should not try to insult them, nor should we do it in such a way that that person says, see me, I ain't coming back to that masjid again. That's it. But we should do it bil hikmah, with wisdom. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has also mentioned to us with regards to what takes place in the masjid. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Naha an ash-shara'i wal bay'i wa an tushhada wa an tunshada fihi dalatun aw yunshada fihi shi'run." The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, "Naha an ash-shara'i wal bay'," that we are prohibited from buying and selling in the masjid. The masjid is not a place for buying and selling. When we come to the masjid, it is for ibadah, tilawat of Quran, dhikr. It is not a place for buying and selling. Sometimes you will hear people speak about business transactions in the masjid. They close the deal off in the masjid. No. These things should not be done in the masjid. The masjid are only for the ibadat and the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No buying, no selling. أن تنشر فيه ضالة. Now should a person seek anything that is lost? A person should not go around the masjid and say, I have lost so and so, anyone saw my so and so? No, the masjid is not for that. It is mentioned that once the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam heard a companion coming to the masjid, and he said, I have lost my red camel. Is there anyone who has seen it? The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, may Allah not allow him to find it. Why? Because he is making such announcement in the masjid. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam make dua against it. So we have to be very careful. If it is that, let's say for instance, we find something, if there's an imam, we can bring it to the attention of the imam, or we can put it on the member, as the case may be. But we don't walk around the masjid, who owns this? Anybody missing this? Don't do that. That is not what masjid is for. أو ينشد فيه شعر. Nor is a person allowed poetry. The Arabs, their favorite pastime was poetry. They will spend hours and hours and hours in poetry. In our time is all talk. We could spend hours and hours and hours. Sometimes a brother, he will come to the masjid, and instead of remaining in the masjid getting some blessings, because remember, once you come and you remain in the masjid in the state of wudu as you're sitting here, then the angels, they keep making dua of maghfirah for you, and it is considered as though you are in salah. Subhanallah. But if you sit down in the masjid and you're all talking, gossiping, blagging, talking about people's business, backbiting, slandering, you get nothing. So the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says that there's no recitation of poetry in the masjid. Actually, in the time of Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala an, he had set up a special platform for those people who want to go talk poetry, who wants to speak. And as we are on this topic, is that there's a very thin line with regards to what is actual masjid and the open area or the covered space. And that will be determined by the people who manages the masjid, the imam, and those who would have been the founding members of the masjid. Because all these laws that I'm speaking about is actual masjid. For example, this entire building is under one roof, as we may consider it. But not the entire thing is masjid. So for example, if a person wants to speak about business, he wants to speak something about business, he can step out of the walls of the masjid and he can speak about it. If a person wants to speak about worldly things, he can step out the wall and speak about it. Because the masjid should not be used for that. So, whichever masjid that you belong to, you should find out what is actual masjid. Because a lot of times we think within ourselves that this is masjid and it is not really masjid. So we should find out what is actual masjid. And these laws are pertaining to actual masjid. So Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala, and what he did, he built a platform which was out of the masjid. It was within the same, under the same roof, but it was outside, whereby people can go and talk and whatever they need to do outside there. But he never allowed anyone talking in the masjid. He was very strict on that. Very, very strict. Actually, it is mentioned that once a companion, Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala an, was in the masjid. And this has been narrated by Sahib ibn Yazid. And he says, I was sleeping, I was lying down in the masjid, and I felt a pebble. That is the adab and the etiquettes that the companions, they had for masjid. The companions had that because they were taught by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Khalifas had that, the tabi'i, the tabi'i. So Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala, he picked up a pebble and he just threw it so as to get the person's attention. Because there were these two people who were speaking very loud in the masjid. They were raising their voice, they were speaking loud. So Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala and told him, he says, Won't call those people, because he said, Sahib ibn Yazid, he said, when I raised up, I saw it was Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala. So Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala, and he says, go and bring those two people for me. When they came, Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala and asked them, where are you from? They said, we're from Taif. He says, if you were a resident of Medina, then I would have punished you. I would have punished you. They were raising their voices in the masjid, because the masjid is not for that. However, because of the fact that they were from Taif, and they were not accustomed with the strictness of Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala with regards to the masjid, he just gave them a warning and he allowed them to go. So, as we were speaking about the masjid, we are not allowed to engage ourselves in business transaction deals. However, in extension to this, the ulama have said that things like mashura, consultation, arbitration can be done once it is for deen, once it is connected to deen. So for example, a person is two brothers are having a dispute. You can deal with it in the masjid. There's nothing wrong with that. Why? Because it is connected to deen. Here you're trying to bring unity between two brothers. A person is having mashura, they want to discuss something about deen, they're allowed to have it in the masjid. However, the laws of the masjid must be upheld. Very important with regards to the masjid. Sometimes it happens that you will find people will find themselves in situations where they will have an arguing in the masjid. Brothers are raising their voices in the masjid. This is not allowed in the masjid. No arguments in the masjid. No fight in the masjid. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he even explained, he says that they had such respect for the masjid that they would not even unsheath, take out their swords in the masjid. That is how much respect they had for the masjid. That if it was in the masjid, it would remain in the sheath of the sword will remain in its sheath. Not only that, but along with that, we find that sometimes when people come into the masjid and someone is praying, they will cross over that person. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, if you knew the harms of crossing over in front of a person whilst they're praying, if you had to wait for 40 years, you would have remained there waiting for that person to finish their prayer. And what you do is that if, let's say for instance, that person is praying whilst performing salah, that person is allowed to the extent of putting their hands in front to stop you. Sometimes people are unaware and they may pass in front of you. You can just stretch your hands out to stop them. But beyond that, you shouldn't go. You shouldn't be like, stop, hey. Once you do that, then your salah is broken. On the other hand, we should be considerate. Sometimes it happens that people are performing salah and they will go right in front of the doorway where everyone has to pass, and you're standing there performing salah. This is not being considerate. We should make sure that we do not block the entrance. Also, whilst in the masjid, those who are in the state of janaba, major impurity. For example, a man, he's in a state of major impurity, he needs to take a ghusl. He's not allowed to enter the masjid until he purifies himself, until he takes a ghusl. Nor is a woman allowed to come into the masjid while she's in a state of haid and nifas. She's not allowed to enter into the masjid. If it is that in some masjids, they have the actual masjid and then they have an extension to it. That extension, it is not considered to be masjid, but it may be under the same roof as the masjid. Then if a woman is in the state of haid, there's nothing wrong. She can come maybe to listen to a lecture because she's not coming for salah. She can come and perform her salah. We cannot prevent women from coming to the masjid. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam never did it. However, they can be reprimanded when it comes to if they break the laws of the Sharia whilst coming to the masjid. Because the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he warned them that when you come to the masjid, you should not put on such high fragrance, perfume, nor should you put on those anklets and those things that whilst walking, you will hear noise that draw attraction to themselves. This is not allowed. If they come, they go to the women's side, there's nothing wrong with that. But we are not allowed to prevent them from coming to the masjid. However, the best place for the women to perform their salah is at their homes. They get more blessings. They get more blessings. The other thing which is very important, with regards to a person while he's in the masjid, if let's say for instance he is sitting, he should not, let's say for instance he comes in a little late and there are people sitting in the masjid, he should not cross over people and push people, try to find a place. No, he should not do that. Unless there's a reason for him to come in front. Like he's coming to give a khutbah or lead salah, then he can pass his way. But you are not allowed to push your way to come into the front. No. Even though performing salah in the front saf is better, is afdal, is best, he's not allowed to push his way. If he comes into the masjid and there's a space, he can take his time and come and fill the space. If there's no space, then he sit where he gets the space at the back. He's not allowed to push anyone and, brother, go down, this is my seat. No, there's nothing like that. Nobody has no space in the masjid. It is the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The other thing is, with regards to when we are leaving the masjid, when we are about to leave the masjid, how do we leave the masjid? Many a times you will find that people, they will find themselves in a situation where they will come into the masjid, they will leave the lights on, leave the fans on, they dirty the masjid, they will eat in the masjid. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there's narration which mentioned that the companions, they ate in the masjid, but not at the expense of leaving the masjid dirty. So if for some reason a person eats in the masjid, then he must make sure that he cleans the masjid. He don't leave mess behind. As I mentioned before, this is the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if it is that he comes to the masjid, he puts on a fan, puts on a light, and he's leaving the masjid and no one remains there, then he should leave the masjid and before leaving the masjid, take it off. When leaving the masjid now, he should leave with his left foot. And he make the dua, Allahumma ghfirli warham, or Ghufranaka. These are some of the du'as that he can make when leaving the masjid. And seek forgiveness because of the fact, why is he seeking forgiveness? Because he do not know what error he would have made whilst in the masjid. So with regards to the adabs and the etiquettes of the masjid, there are much more. However, inshallah I will leave space if there is anyone who has any questions. Inshallah I will entertain about 3-4 minutes of questions, inshallah, if there's anyone who has any questions, because there's a lot of things that should that has to be covered with regards to the adab and etiquettes of masjid, right, that maybe I would have forgotten, right, and inshallah by the questions, inshallah I might remember, inshallah. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our coming. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us, inshallah. Wa akhu da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Allah